The bourse yesterday once again was pretty thinly traded for the most part. We've seen the impact the perceived pre-budget jitters is having on the currency. To what extent is anticipation of the country's budget due to be read on Thursday impacting equity market activity right now?
I believe the impact of the budget is actually going to be significant because, as I said earlier, Ron, this quarter has been pretty interesting, the corporate scene, especially for the finance sector. And as many banks re-strategize and, come up with new policies on how the way to go forward and take advantage of the East African integration, most of them actually looking at how the budget is going to be, the issues that the Minister of Finance is actually going to address in the budget, and how in tandem or in line with the policies, how it's going to actually boost the revenue bottom line. So I believe there's going to be a lot of significant effect on the market, and seeing how the market went yesterday, we'll be looking at probably slow trade today and tomorrow as many investors hold back and wait to see what's the way forward, and then probably resume intense trading come next week.
That in terms of local events. At the same time, globally, we've got the Eurozone crisis continuing to persist. I mentioned earlier that we've got foreign players still, though, showing much interest in the stocks like East African Breweries, Equity Bank, even Safaricom. Are you seeing pullbacks in terms of level of activity from that end, though?
I think what's happening on the international front will actually be a boost for local markets, especially for foreign investors. Diverting the funds into the Kenyan market in terms of buying into particular equities like Equity Bank, Safaricom, Kenya Commercial Bank, looking at stocks that actually have very strong fundamentals and have a regional impact on the current business share, and seeing that the fact that the shilling has actually touched its lowest point low in 5 years. It's interesting to see how foreign investors are actually going to react to this, because for us at the moment it's actually trying to figure out what's really going on, how the euro impact on this will actually keep going on. So watching today and tomorrow on how foreign investors will be actually reacting to this is key.
Well, spelling what for local investors then in your books, how should they be playing the markets in this context?
If I was an investor, actually, I'll be holding back to actually look at how the budget is actually going to be read and whether the government will be looking at, implementing the second phase of the stimulus package. Because at the end of the day, this quarter has been pretty interesting, and a lot of fundamentals actually changing. Many companies are shifting their policy. Like today, we're seeing Centum releasing its results, and looking at the strategy is actually pretty interesting. So it's a thing that I'll have to get all the information on the table before I can make a decision. So this week, will be a good week to re-strategize, look at how the policies from the government are going to be, look at how the East African integration is actually going to affect many listed companies, and also clearly understand how the euro effect is going to have on our shilling, because I believe the shilling will still keep going low.
Well, looking at some company news making headlines so far, KCB announced yesterday that its rights issue had been approved. The CMA, though, approving the company could increase its shares by less than the company itself had hoped for. Why?
KCB's rights issue is actually an interesting one, because I think a year ago they held one, and for the same reasons they're still actually holding one, and the reason being that they want to expand, farm the regional expansion. But I believe there's more to the story than we're seeing it, and at the moment the shares are pretty liquid at the stock market. So having another rights issue of whatever ratio will actually be an issue that many analysts are actually trying to see and understand, because at the end of the day, the share hasn't really picked up its true value since the last rights issue, and holding another rights issue before complete recovery or complete growth of its portfolio margin is an interesting aspect.
Well, certainly, the company had planned to raise, 15 billion shillings from this rights issue. It's now obviously going to be raising less than that. What do you see this doing for the company's regional expansion plans and earnings potential moving forward?
One thing I think as an analyst I should be looking at is why the current CEO's tenure was actually extended by 2 years. I believe is to look at how the strategy can be realigned, because at the end of the day, if you want to raise 15 billion and you raise way below that, and then like many banks like Equity is actually giving them a run for their money, and they really need to farm up the regional expansion. I think a different path is actually going to be picked, and different ways to raise capital that are needed, because the regional expansion is serious, and with the East African integration actually being a reality, they really need to continue offering the services. And if they do not achieve this target, it's actually going to have a serious dent in the books at the end of the day, and I don't think it will be sitting pretty well with investors and shareholders.
Well, you've mentioned Equity Bank as one of the strong contenders within this space. We've got Cooperative Bank also sitting there. It's 10 cents off its all-time closing high. The CEO made bullish noises earlier this week about for the full year being potentially in the order of 5 billion shillings. Do you see them hitting that target?
I believe Cooperative Bank has really done wonders with its strategy. The bottom line has really increased. The strategy of actually using circles to improve their revenue return and, firm up their IT, provision of services has been good. And especially with the, the equity market business, the investment wing through Kingdom Securities has picked up pretty well, and it's created confidence in the bank, especially from the common mwananchi on the ground on how to, buy stocks at the market. So for them to be bullish, I think they have a right. But given what Equity has actually done, especially with mobile transactions, using the latest IT to bring banking services to the local person at the touch of a button, I think it's going to be a challenge to see what other banks can do. We've seen a bank that's not listed on the market, Family Bank, trying to ape the same strategy so that it can be able to keep up. Because at the end of the day, that's the only way that many people are actually going to have banks accounts with banks.
Well, expectations are dangerous to manage though. I mean, let's take a look at Kenya Airways. It's still pulling back after its full year numbers release. It came off a further 1.85% in yesterday's session. It closed at 53 shillings. Were expectations out of this company just too high? Because it certainly managed the turnaround that it promised.
I believe at the end of the day, the expectations for KQ were pretty high, because at the end of the day, the results were positive, and you could see that definitely the management has done a serious turnaround in terms of its strategy. But many people who know exactly what's happening at KQ will realize that there are other issues that are actually weighing it down. The pending lawsuit, in terms of compensation for the accident that was there a while back in Central Africa, with families seeking compensation, and lawyers actually saying that this will run into billions of shillings. And then at the end of the day, basically how they've handled the World Cup issue, because we realize that many Kenyan companies haven't really gone out to market the services to benefit seriously from the World Cup. And I think after 6 months of talking about the World Cup and the benefit to KQ, I think KQ has reached its marginal point in terms of return, and now it's going through a phase what you call price correction, and I think it will drop to around 47 shillings. That's why it will actually firm up for a couple of more weeks.